Hello, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. We are here with a band, three guys. Although one has long hair like me. Hello.
Hi.
I used to have, but that was in my teens.
So, because they decided to be called Kavus for the night, like this is a new band that just formed, I'll just explain to people that we're actually in the presence of the Utopia Strong,
The original. That's the one
the
of
original.
the holographic originals as well. Yes.
What a strange name, huh? Or
Well, all band names are strange, right?
like, did you have a marketing guy help you to find that name to achieve global success?
In fact, the label wanted us to get rid of the definite article. They wanted us just to be Utopia Strong, but we insisted we were the Utopia Strong. I like the because it makes it more like a sort of classic psychedelic band, like the Revolving Paint Dream or I like it when Pink Floyd were the Pink Floyd at the beginning. So yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how it panned out, but it's now like a lot of band names. It's got past that now. We don't really feel. It is what it is now. But
I don't know. I've been in some bands with really shit names in the past, and this is a good one, I think.
We got on very well from the start, so I think the strong part was very much important. And the Utopia stuff, well, that was another sort of story. But
it just appeared. I mean, one night we were just talking about names, and then I remember where we were. We were in the listening room, the big room.
We were sat by the bar.
We were sat by the bar, and I can't remember. It was about like 1 a.m, but somebody happened upon it, or the Utopian Strong, and then we just had it, and then it was like, no, the Utopia Strong. And then once we sort of decided it was okay, well, that's the name now,
Yeah, like I just thought about it now. Like there was this kind of hip, popular TV show called Utopia in the UK in the like 10 years ago or so. That was kind of psychedelic. I think it was called Utopia. I'm not. Maybe I got it wrong. But the fact that the three of you are together is a sort of utopia, or at least the beginning of it, isn't it?
Yeah, we're one of those rare bands that likes each other,
No, but just the fact that it's something you couldn't invent the reunion of you, the three of you, in a way. Like it is when you know the story, you understand it. But if you don't know it and you just present it like, who Steve is, who Kavus is, who Michael is, it is a sort of unlikely story, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ridiculously unlikely. I mean, it all stems from Magma. I think that would be fair to say.
Yeah, I think that's right, yeah.
So Magma were playing a retrospective of 5 weeks, I think, or at least 4 weeks worth of shows at Le Triton in the outskirts of Paris.
So just for the listeners who don't know, Magma is the French prog band from Christian Vander, stellar drummer, still very active, even if they started, I believe, in '69, which is a testimony. And they are sort of like almost a cult in a way, a cult band and almost a cult. There's definitely a cult aspect. But what's funny is that Magma is a huge band. The Triton is a very tiny venue in the outskirts of Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's like sort of a cafe auto of its style in London, but I think Magma have an affinity with the place, so they have played there on many occasions, and certainly Christian Vander has in the jazz trio he plays in that as well. And I bumped into Kavus at one of those gigs, and we hit it off and had a great time. And then further down the line, after we'd started to do a radio show together, we got to the stage where we started to DJ. And eventually we were asked to DJ at this is the shortened version. Eventually we were asked to DJ at Glastonbury, and that was like a bit of a shock, but we did it. And at that time, Kavus had bumped into Mike via another band.
Yeah, Mike was playing in Guapo.
Yeah.
But I knew Mike, who'd been playing with the drummer in Guapo, Dave Smith, has another project called Stargazer's assistant, and you might have been playing with them.
The Stargazers.
The Stargazer.
I don't think it is actually, but yeah.
I'd never met Mike actually until he first started coming to Guapo rehearsals, and it wasn't till we were playing in Latvia, and then we had a shared love of the Fields of the Nephilim and Sabbat and Iron Maiden and Warhammer figures. And we just really hit it off on this tour, you know. Much to
now I just want to put out my my customized Warhammer 40k Nurgle Major Demon.
There you go. So, you know, and so but we had this. We were going to this festival in Latvia, and that was when we really hit it off. And the entire thing we were just talking about, you know, the Nef and Citadel miniatures, and I knew Mike lived in Glastonbury, so that when we got offered to DJ there, I said to Steve, "Look, why don't we come and stay with my mate, because it's a lot nicer than camping, and we can get a shower every day." And when the three of us got together, it was just like really groovy. You know, the whole time we were together, it was like, oh, this is a cool gang, you know. And you don't always get three people; you can't always get it right. But when the three of us got together, it was like, God, now this is a gang. So in a way, the band was formed before we'd ever made music together. It was just like we had a little gang, and then what would happen whenever we DJ, Mike would just come along and be our tour manager, and get us beers and what have you. So we were already a gang anyway, and then once we started playing together, you know, that was...
Yeah, I mean, the final part of the jigsaw was I stumbled upon modular synthesis and you know, the Eurorec modules, which are this sort of rabbit hole you go down. And I finally sort of bit the bullet and started to try and work out how to play one of these things. Mike helped me early on because he very much in Teleplasmist, another band that Mike's involved in. He plays modular synthesis anyway. So eventually I got up to some type of running speed. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and before I knew it, I was we were jamming and hanging out and making some music. We basically, just for the fun of it, Mike recorded it without us really knowing he was recording it. We listened back. We thought there's some great parts in some of these long jams we'd done, and we made an album. And yeah, amazing.
And as the train spotter that I am, I apologize for not showing the Stargazer assistant records I have somewhere here in the chaos, which features a third member that is worth mentioning as well, I would say.
That's Dave Knight.
Exactly.
Yes.
No, Dave Knight, isn't there a third regular in the band, or is it really the two of you?
No, it's Dave Smith, Dave Knight, and
yeah, Dave Knight. Yeah, exactly. Dave's like so many Daves. Sorry.
Yeah.
But the Teleplasmist thing was quite amazing to watch. So that I was really sort of smitten with that, and as a result of that, it sort of spurred me on to sort of investigate a bit more after some help from Mike, who was sort of already up to speed with synthesis and that world. And before I knew it, I became a musician, apparently.
I would say what was funny about that first jam is that we said for a while, I think it had been talked about for a little while, and then we ended up having this jam on like the 2nd of January, and you know, Mike recording it, but because we had sort of like had this shared interest in things like Magma and that sort of thing, I kind of thought that the music we made was just going to be, I thought it was going to be more atonal and more experimental. I don't want to say experimental, but I thought it was going to be like denser and more like sort of, yeah, I guess more atonal and dissonant. And I was surprised at just how sort of pretty it turned out. And all it was just us playing together for the day. And I think there were a few more sort of like, you know, sort of atonal. I
think that might have to do with the fact that you guys are British pagans, but we'll go back to that eventually.
It always surprised me how pretty I think the music sounds.
Yeah, you will always end up doing like what's her name again? Shirley Collins music in the end.
Yeah. You played on Shirley Collins' album, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
There you
I
go.
can't actually remember the name of the album at the moment, but yeah.
I think it's called Collins too.
The Collins.
But
Tease.
the
See,
like we skipped a few chapters because like you guys, Steve and Kavus, you met and decided to DJ together during the show together. But obviously, Kavus had been doing music for a long time before, as had Michael. But you, Steve, you hadn't.
No. So this
Because quickly, for the people, obviously, if you're on the watching this, you might know the channel, and so for those who don't, like, most of this channel is a live stream every Friday evening where I play all kinds of music without hierarchy, but really going deep into weirdness sometimes. And at one point, you and I connected through that, you being watching this, and I had no idea who you were because I'm not a freaking Brit. Because apparently, like, it might be a surprise to some who were watching this, but
yeah,
people know you, Steve. People do tend to know you.
Yeah, so if anybody's viewing from Europe or further afield that hasn't watched the game called Snooker, at one stage in the past, I was pretty good at putting a ball in a hole with a stick. And in the UK, I was quite well known for that. So it was a bit of a shock to the system, not just for the general public that I joined a band and started DJing, but it was a shock to the public for me.
when you say general public, I mean
the general public, or whoever the general public are.
A fraction of them. I mean, most of them.
A tiny fraction.
Yeah.
But
More of a shock for me. Yeah, when I retired, it was like from competitively playing. It seemed like other doors opened. There was no. It didn't. There was no plan. And the next minute, before I knew it, I was DJing at Glastonbury with Kavus, and then in a split second after that, we formulated this piece of music, made it into a CD length, LP length. We thought, we'll take this to a few record labels, see how it goes. And one particular record label, Rocket Recordings, went, yeah, we actually like this, even though there's a bit of a liability because there's a snooker player in the band. So is it a novelty band? But once they listen,
but it's not like, let's be fair. Like, now, of course, you're gonna be modest, but I know you also privately. I know you are actually very modest, or at least you seem to be.
yeah. But I think it was a shock, but it wasn't a
because
shock.
you're not just a good snooker player. You're one of the biggest figures in the history of the game.
Yeah. So that was it feels like a world ago. That so
I will tell you what, though, when you're not from the UK and you're skint and you have the telly and you don't have you can't afford to purchase all these big expensive cable networks for sports, you end up with Eurosport, and then you end up watching an awful lot of snooker because I guess the the rights of that are pretty cheap.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, but I think that for me was the 80s and a bit of the 90s. But towards the end of my career, I was just sort of treading water, really. So,
but really, though, with you, like, that was the 80s, but you started to play in the 70s, which is also when you develop a very strong interest in music as well, that you and I have talked about.
Yes, well, I mean, this band here.
Let me just
have a look at that. So, there you go.
Oh, yes.
So this band was my sort of favorite band, along with Magma, back in the 70s. And I was obviously slightly different to most kids of my era, but I would imagine the same for Mike and Kavus as well, because I think once you start going down that path, you are not listening to a massive amount of pop music. You're seeking out stuff. So I was always trying to seek out different types of bands, and Gentle Giant seemed to me to be the best of the prog bands, if you could call it prog band, or if you could call Magma a prog band. I don't know. Those two bands appeal to me more than any other. And I'm not exactly sure why. You're not really on board with Gentle Giant, are you?
Not especially, no.
But
I think when I was younger, it was more in some ways, it was the subcultures that were connected to these particular musics that attracted me as much as the music itself. You know, the alternative to popular culture and pop music was weirdo music and weirdo culture.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think it picks you. I don't think you pick it. It just picks you. And then somewhere down the line, I started listening to Knife World, Guapo, Teleplasmist.
Sorry about that.
Apologies.
Yeah. What stunt are you getting us? He's getting something out.
He's going to
get something.
Something that might have been a sort of. I've never talked about that band with Steve, and I've never heard any of you guys because I've been reading some about you. But a band that, in many ways, might have been also kind of the crossroads of something that might trigger you guys to get into what Michael was talking about.
Oh, I love that record. That's my favorite.
Is that the Mountain Grill one?
Yeah. I think of that as being the Diesel Hawkwind. I think of that there's like the Diesel Hawkwind, which is like the Lemmy Dick Mick sort of era. And I think of the sort of the like the Lab Coat Hawkwind, which is like the more new wavy, the Bob Calvert kind of Quark, Strangers and Charm and Hawklords and that kind of thing. But that's my favorite of the Diesel Hawkwind albums. But I tell you what, I saw Gong played with them about 2 weeks ago. That it was supposed to be their last ever gig. We did a festival with them in Kent called A New Day, and I love Hawkwind. I saw them when I was 17 in 1989, and they really blew my mind. It's totally, they're incredible. But after that, it was always diminishing returns. I've seen them quite a lot, and they've been terrible. But 2 weekends ago, they're really back on form because Thibault Sandra's in them now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it's because he's in the band necessarily, but they're really back on top of it again. And they played from that record. They played "Better Believe It," which I've never heard them do before. So I'm really pleased to say the last time I saw Hawkwind 2 weeks ago, they were amazing because I've seen quite a few not amazing Hawkwind gigs.
Yeah, I can imagine that. But would you agree that, considering when this was being released and the culture behind it, because it's not just the space rock and like it's also Michael Moorcock who was writing lyrics for them, which or it also connects to you were talking about Citadel and Warhammer and all that. Yeah. Like there is a sort of English psychedelia, but in this case a little bit more with danger, with something a little bit outward rather than inward.
Well, I mean, the thing as well for me about Hawkwind was it just seemed to be that, especially for me getting into them in the sort of mid to late 80s, it just seemed to be the lifestyle that went with them was really exciting. And they seemed to be really tied in with like free festivals. And when I was a teenager, I was in this like sort of psychedelic metal band, and we used to play a few of these free festivals.
Thoughts and Prayers.
What's that?
Thoughts and Prayers.
Thoughts about So we used to play a lot of these free festival sort of things, and Hawkwind seemed to be very much a part of that. And I remember seeing them when I was 17 in Plymouth, and bands, not many bands used to come to Plymouth where I grew up, and it was like, I just left school, I just started growing my hair, and then going to this Hawkwind gig and seeing about like 1,500 like fucking freaks. And I didn't know that all these freaks were around in Plymouth, and it was like, oh my god, these are my people, So it was really kind of like that Hawkwind gig was really pivotal for me for a number of reasons. But as you said, as much for the culture that they came from and the culture that they seem to be about as the music itself. But they were definitely a band I was totally into when I was a teenager. I was into them before I was into Gong.
No, other way around for me.
Really?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because Gong and Hawkwind get compared a lot. And I know they have shared one member, Tim Blake. But the interesting thing is that Hawkwind has never had any virtuosos. And I was thinking about this the other day. there are no virtuoso members in Hawkwind. Whereas Gong has had like Didier Malherbe, Steve Hillage, Pierre Merlin. You know, Alan Holdsworth was in Gong at one point. You know, Gong is a band that's had these very, very accomplished in the past virtuoso musicians, but Hawkwind is more about an attitude and about just.
Have you listened to the first solo Dave Brock album though?
No, I haven't. No,
I would encourage you to do that.
What's it called?
It's
Dave
like
Brock.
a sort of drawing of him, painting of him with a sort of like weird. Like I thought it's not where it should be there, so otherwise I would have shown it to you now. But I think it's sort of got like a Manuel Götzing feel.
Oh right, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So not necessarily exactly virtuoso, but still, like going a little more in that direction.
I mean,
which
just to clarify, when I say they don't have virtuosos, that isn't a diss. I mean, I'm not especially
no
virtuoso.
I know.
It's that Gong has had these really accomplished players, whereas Hawkwind, it's like just seems a lot more instinctual and just like kind of just people who are just like just there to generate some beautiful noise kind of thing.
Yeah, who would want Phil Collins in their band? Huh? It's
God, brilliant drummer. Well, not now, but brilliant drummer. Come on.
yeah. I know that that Steve has a little bit of a past with prog rock.
Well, I didn't have as much of a past as it's made out, because there are only certain bands I quite liked, and a lot of the prog rock bands bored the crap out of me, really. I wasn't particularly into any of the noodling or any of the long drum solos, really. I mean, I know Magma had the occasional long drum solo, but it wasn't that I was drawn to. But I've never really thought of Gentle Giant and Magma as the two bands that stood out as being proggy, really. I'm sure probably Gentle Giant are in that vein, but I was more into the Canterbury scene back in the 70s, and that didn't seem like that was the same gig at all. And so Robert Wyatt and all of the bands, National Health and Hatfield and the North, all of those bands, these felt more in my vein and more sophisticated to me. And obviously Henry Cowell was the sort of the pinnacle, even though they weren't exactly a Canterbury band. And that led me down the road of a lot of the stuff that was on RER Records and a lot more experimental. So I went down that road before I sort of had a detour into soul music and then came back later.
So Recommended Records was kind of maybe your entry point to electronic music then.
Yeah, well, it's my entry point to electronic music was actually during a radio show we did where we got guests on, and we had a couple of guests from a band called Sanguine Hum, and they were very much into electronic music, and they chose the music for the show, and they played a load of Alltecca, Aphex Twin.
I brought in some stuff before. I played like stuff like Chiastic Slide, and
that was my tipping
So this was not the entry point of electronic music to you guys?
I've got that, but not with that cover.
Oh, you're showing off.
I don't know that cover.
You're showing off with that cover.
Of course, I'm going to show you off a little bit.
What is that cover?
It's probably a cover that's far rarer than the island. Although I do have an island with the big eye.
Oh, this is on island as well, but this is the original cover.
Oh, no, he's got.
Hold
on. He's got so many rare records.
Well,
it's outrageous. Anyway,
wow. No, I was a big White Noise fan. I know. It's funny. I never really thought of it as being electronic per se. I kind of it always seemed more like tied in with like kind of that kind of just what I think of it. It's kind of, and I know the cover is very there's like a sort of what's the word for black and white? Is it monotone? Monochrome. I think it was like sort of monochrome psychedelia.
Yeah.
There's something really monochrome psychedelia about Piper at the Gates of Dawn as well, and for some reason, like I hear like an Electric Storm as having a sort of that kind of Piper at the Gates of Dawn vibe. It's funny. I suppose it is an electronic album. I don't really.
But in a sense, it's not really just about white noise. It's about the BBC Radio Workshop.
Yeah.
The fact that you had electronic music without thinking about the fact you had electronic music in your culture around you just by way of watching Doctor Who or listening to the BBC with all the jingles being
Yeah.
composed by someone. In this case, Delia Derbyshire, Alan Hawkwood, like people like that.
Well, I certainly wasn't into that at the time. It passed me by, and you were only informed back then by either your friends or radio, and there wasn't a massive amount of alternative radio on.
But it's interesting because
The
for me,
the BBC is alternative, Steve?
Well, I'm sure there was more alternative music on French radio than there was on BBC. You know, that was pretty.
No, but in France it was the same. I think it's just that as in France you had the GRM, the Groupe de Recherche Musicale, you had the BBC Radio Workshop. When the national TV and radio needed music or music cues or sound effects, etc., then they had by state contract rely on the people who were hired musicians and who happened to be experimental musicians who were commissioned to do illustrative music to documentaries about Egypt or whatever, and use the means they had. So I would guess that in a way you would be subjected to a lot of that without even realizing it, because you were not seeking it out, but it was there in the background.
Yeah, like all the David Attenborough shows, for example.
Yeah.
You remember Life on Earth? That had really far out soundtrack.
But I mean, for me, I sort of got turned on. My year zero was sort of 1980, and at that point, you've got what was I suppose the birth of like, at least in the UK, like sort of synth pop. I remember sort of, I remember Depeche Mode and Human League, and that kind of stuff coming out, and that was really exciting. I was really, really into that because it was just all pop music. I think pop music is great, And then, not long after, 5 or 6 years later, you've got things like 808 State and Orbital, and I suppose the Orb. And then following on from that, you've got like, sort of Black Dog and Autechre and Future Sound of London. And then Warp started doing those like artificial intelligence compilations. And that just all felt like part of the pantheon. And that never really felt, I knew that stuff was different from, say, like the stuff coming out on noise records like Creator and Voivod and Celtic Frost, but it was all happening at the same time, and it was just as exciting to me. It was like I was really, really into like Celtic Frost and Coroner, but I was really, really into like sort of Black Dog and Autechre as well, and Aphex and Square Pusher, and it just seemed to be like, hearing like coming online and getting into like Depeche Mode and Iron Maiden, and then hearing how that sort of turned into, about 5 years later, somehow Autechre and Celtic Frost, and they seem to sort of follow the same paths, and it all seemed part of the same kind of pantheon. So it was always around. I never really thought of like I thought of electronic music as being different, but it all felt like fun stuff that was happening at the time, sort of thing.
What were you into then back in your formative years?
When were my formative years?
I think it was last year, was it?
What, when I was a teenager, you mean?
Well, yeah, when all of a sudden it started to really kick in, whatever you
kind of, punk, metal, goth, that kind of thing, really, I suppose. But that was all happening alongside a classical music education as well. So I was into all like particularly 20th century classical music at the same time, but I somehow saw them as two separate parallel things, and it wasn't maybe until my 20s that I felt it, sort of realized it was all part of the same world.
And what about from an electronic music point of view?
What, wanting to make it or listening to it?
Well, actually going out and buying something that you felt you needed to have, because I think that's sort of like a little bit of the thing about having to have
the step of buying something, even if you know it's around, but like that you need it in your life.
Yeah, well, when I was at university, a lot of people on the music course were also doing like a sound engineering course, and loads of people were into writing dance music on computers, and I sort of thought, I'm going to give this a go. And that was the first time I bought a synthesizer, but I wasn't really that into it. I sort of gave it a go for a year and then was like, no, this isn't for me. But really getting into the sort of the modular stuff and the stuff like with Teleplasmist and what we do, that was seeing that guy, do you know Robert Lowe? Robert Aubrey Lowe. Who
Yeah,
does
yeah, absolutely. From Lickens and
He was doing a solo show, supporting a band I was playing with at a festival in Berlin called CTM Festival. And and it was the first time I'd really seen this sort of modular synth thing, and I was just amazed by. He was just sat there singing while all these lights flashed and this beautiful music came out of this box, and I thought, I've really got to get into that. That was the
amazing musician who's now doing a lot of soundtracks and who's now has a connection to the UK and the underground culture, since he did the soundtrack of the recent Candyman remake as well.
Oh, did he? Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. Which is the best part of the
one, didn't he?
Sorry?
Philip Glass did the soundtrack for the original Candyman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's a pretty good legacy.
Pretty cool.
But weren't you guys like listening to John Peel, to the BBC at one point?
Yeah, a little, yeah.
Mostly for all the punk and hardcore, really.
Yeah.
All right.
Like Napalm Death and Carcass and all that.
I think mine would have been because of Soft Machine. That would have been my John Peel buy.
Because you also had like a lot of electronic music without necessarily realizing it. Like Ultravox, I guess in the 80s, it was like a sort of a new wave band, but like when you dig deep into where they're coming from, and the fact that it was recorded at Coney Plank Studio in Köln, one of the birthplace of electronic music, but also the Human League and all these bands like that I still see like billboards in the subway here of Human League in 2024, and that's like ghastly, but like but yeah, it used to be something different. But like I was just thinking the impact of John Peel obviously had on you, because like
well, that was I'm so glad that we got
and
to
see I used the like you like I have a few of these. I have the Napalm Death ones and
I've got the Bolt Thrower and Napalm Death and Prophecy of Doom and but it was so lovely doing that, and the guys from Rocket
This is your latest record, by the way.
What's that? Sorry?
This is your latest release, by the way.
Yeah.
Just as a side issue, that the names on the LP.
You had fun.
Yeah,
you had a lot of fun.
Kavus had fun.
It's my life's work. Those names.
This is basically his hobby, is making up band names. But the CD has obviously, Stunter, you won't have the CD, but the CD has a completely different load of band names on.
You just missed an opportunity to say that all these bands are real and that was your own.
Well, the story was apparently was that on the Peel sessions, one of the bands was fake, and the rest were all real. And no one, because there's so many bands, no one really knew which one was fake. And apparently Billy Bragg in the 90s or the late 80s sent John Peel a postcard. He was somewhere pretty obscure, in another country, and he sent John Peel a postcard saying, "Having a great time here, just watched," and he put the fake band in, "just watched such and such do a show here last night." And John Peel said he's the only person who knew who the fake band was. But I've been through it a load of times. I couldn't take. So what I should have done, we should have put a real band on there, but I didn't think.
By now there probably is one.
Yeah. Well, my dream is, because here's the thing about going back to sort of early synth pop, is that in A Clockwork Orange, there's a bit where Alex takes those two girls to the record shop, and he's thumbing through this, going, "Oh, we got this." And there's a few bands he mentioned. I can't remember. It's like Heaven 17 is one of them. There's something else, but I think three of the bands that he thumbs through, they're all fake bands. Became real bands, So my dream is that some bands will actually name themselves after that. Our radio sessions.
The rarest John Peel album has the Utopia Strong on it.
Which one?
I don't know. That's how we got our name.
Oh, is it?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Sorry. What are you saying?
I don't know what I'm saying. We were the fake band.
Standard. Oh, were we? Yeah.
I need to go to the toilet. Can I leave you in the capable hands of Mike and Carver just for 2 seconds?
You be the judge of that.
I think
yeah.
But Michael, like you were mentioning, like punk, metal, goth, and all that.
Yeah.
It was only recently that I realized that at one point Mick Harris played with Coil, which is
Really?
yeah, like
I didn't
he
know
did.
that. I thought we were talking about him earlier.
We were talking about Mick. We were talking about Mick Harris earlier. Yeah,
We're big fans of his Instagram page.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
weakeners.
Yeah.
No, he had. Let me see if I can find it. There was recently, a compilation of sort of outtakes. I can't find it. Where it appears that Mick was playing drums for sessions of like around like between 93 and 96.
Oh, really?
So
Oh,
yeah,
that's interesting. I
and
knew nothing about that.
well, it was like the C word. Like I have it somewhere here. Like, oh yeah, it's on the Swan Yard recordings, and you have basically one track that features like it's the Mick Harris drum variation, because the track was ultimately released with drum machines or something, or without drums. I'm not sure. But basically, it's one of these compilations, of like that were probably provided by Danny Hyde.
Oh, I see. It's a recent release, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's but yeah, it's tracks from between 93 and 98 there, and it's all demos and some good stuff actually on this. Not all of these are interesting, but this one was really.
it is very funny that Mike has played with Coil, and the only reason I got into Coil was by watching StuntrockConfusion show. I wasn't aware of Current 93 and some of the stuff that's been done, some of the sort of, I don't know, some of the private releases or some of the David Tibet sort of solo releases. I wasn't aware of that it was this type of music, and so all of a sudden I've never really asked Mike too much about that.
Well, that's the time, because I'll tell you what. So Coral obviously is this, for me, is one of the quintessential like, sorry about my English,
Quintessential, but
quintessential bands of British music of the second part of the 20th century. But I would actually say more the beginning of the 21st century, because as much as Coil was so important to me, I DJ'd for them. I did some stuff with Peter Christopherson, very like nothing serious, but for me it's really about the stuff from the early 2000s that, like, I realize it's the stuff that I go back to the most, because I tend to think that the greatest bands, the greatest artists only do better stuff. Only each record is more interesting than the previous one. And just as it happens, Michael's been around my favorite Coil releases. Like, sorry, I'm a bad boy right now, because Michael knows why I'm a bad boy here. I have the originals. These were originally only released on CD-R, and then CDs with bonus CD mini disc. Yeah. And these bonus tracks are like my favorite Coil stuff, but these are bootlegs, basically. That's what I'm trying to say, that Michael didn't get any money for these. I'm sorry. But he was also part of...
didn't get any money from the others either, did you?
No, I got paid a good session fee. Actually. Yeah. Well, that's not a bootleg, though. Oh, no, it is. Yeah.
No, these one...
That one isn't, no.
Yeah, these ones are not bootlegs,
Yeah.
So when did you sort of joy? Is that the right word? Joy?
Yeah. Well, it was because Thibault Sandra was playing with them live, and then they had a tour booked, and he'd already committed to go on tour with Spiritualized, and they needed to get some musicians in to sort of bolster their live lineup. And they asked a friend of mine who was playing hurdy-gurdy called Cliff Stapleton, and we were playing together as a duo at the time, and he said, do you want to come along to meet them as well? And they decided that they wanted to work with both of us. That was kind of how that happened.
So then you went on. So was it more touring than actual recording? Or
well, initially, but then, well, no, because that remote viewer album, we recorded the parts for that whilst we were sort of rehearsing for the live shows. But initially, it was that it was for a.
Because originally it was not meant to be like a big release. It was just like a tour CDR or something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might have been a bigger release. It's just that there wasn't time to get it pressed up. It was done very much. Everything was done very much at the last minute before that tour.
It is absolutely fantastic release. I think it's one of we have also to remember that John Balance he passed away. Yeah, like this is a bit morbid, but like I was like, that's also to a testament of what kind of band Coil was. Like I was on the mailing list, and when John, the singer, passed away, they sent this to the fans or something. Like I got that in the mail without any idea why, and like that was very nice. But he passed away in 2004, so that's and the band kind of still existed for 10 years as a studio project until the passing of Peter Christopherson.
Not really, I wouldn't say. No, I think it ended when he died.
It's just that this was released later because it took a while to finish.
That was only a year, maybe 18 months later. I remember I did some overdubs on that after Jeff had passed away, but yeah, it was definitely wrapped up within 18 months.
So how many gigs? How many gigs did you? Oh, sorry, carry on.
But I think it was a longer period of time because that vinyl version of it came out much later, but the CD was done.
I think it came out in 2008 or something. Yeah.
But the CD was the year after.
So how many gigs did you do with like
10 or 12, something like that? Yeah,
they didn't do that many gigs. That's the thing. Like because like it was probably I saw them at first time at the All Tomorrow's party.
Amber Sands.
Which featured like what's the name of the fellow who was who played in Spiritualized, the guy who plays the vibes.
Tom Edwards.
Tom Edwards. That was absolutely amazing, and they played that track. Called the Marleybone Road. That is the only place and only time this was recorded, to the best of my knowledge. And so it's just a band that each live was is an event, and they even went to Peter collected all the live recordings he could, and they did like a box set of CDs, but like the most intriguing thing though for me, like, or not intriguing, but what I'm curious about, what was it that you played with them first?
Bagpipes.
What's that?
Bagpipes. I also played a bit of bombard, the Breton shawm, and some balalaika. I think that was it. Yeah, just those three instruments.
So how come did you play these instruments?
Sorry?
How come you ended up playing these instruments? How come that you ended up being a guy who is being asked to play these instruments professionally?
I don't. Why did I take up those instruments? Is that what you mean? Or
yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. I was originally a flute player, and then there was a period of time where my friends I'd left Liverpool where I grew up, and then when I came back to Liverpool, my mates had started a folk band, and they asked me to join on flute, and I very quickly wanted something a bit more exciting to play, which using the similar techniques. So I hit upon the bagpipes.
Obviously.
When I showed this, it was not just to show a bagpipe. It's also because these are compositions by John Burgess and John Cleland. when I was a kid in France, like, okay, bagpipe music, you have the cliche of that, even if we have our own, like, as you say, the bombard also in France. But it wasn't until like I connected with the music of La Montaigne that I could connect with this. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, it's all about listening to very slight variations in something that's seemingly quite monotonous until you really pay attention. And I think that P-Brock is very much is like that as well.
Because
sorry, were you into Coil before the band, or did you just?
I had one album which I really liked.
Right, yeah.
I had Horse Rotivator, which I was really keen on. But yeah, at the time that they asked me to play, though, I was mostly just really into folk music because I'd only been playing the bagpipes for like a couple of years at that point. So I was just really obsessing on that sort of music.
Were you busking with them?
Yeah. That's how I sort of taught myself to play. Actually.
How much did you make from busking with bagpipes?
About $10 an hour.
Wow, really?
Which, in 2000 or 1999 or whatever was reasonable.
It's reasonable now in my world.
In Liverpool, I wouldn't have thought in Liverpool they'd gone down. You got beaten up, wouldn't you?
Well, there was the risk of that as well,
That's part of that's part of the appeal.
No, it's interesting though, because I remember I got into Coil through I think through Nurse with Wound, but originally I think it was probably because of my first exposure was probably the stuff they did for Nine Inch Nails, like when I was a teenager, and I noticed that, and I remember watching the French premiere of the Hollywood movie Seven, and hearing the opening credits, and like, this is Coil. What are you doing? This is the Coil remix of Closer by Nine Inch Nails, which is interesting since the opening credits is also completely ripping off Russell Mills, the graphic designer who was doing all these stuff with Wire in the early 90s, 80s, and who ended up doing the sleeve of that Nine Inch Nails album, The Downward Spiral. And but I remember that for the longest time, people, like in this case me, people who were into stuff like Coil and Nurse with Wound in the 90s as teenagers, we were labeled as goth, which was not necessarily an envious label to have. Like that was kind of my understanding was that like the music press was a bit lazy about that, and like, okay, this is dark music, okay, this is in the goth thing. And it took Coil to start to do stuff like music to play in the dark, volume 1 and 2, and maybe before that the
Moon's Milk,
Time Machines.
Oh yeah.
For probably first Wire magazine to start to take them seriously as something distinct from like teen angst darkness. And then they played with Stockhausen in Spain at the festival. But was it also like all this kind of music, like the darkness, also something that made them label the for you or in the UK as something that is not to be taken that seriously?
Oh, by the press such as The Wire. I've never really thought of. No, I don't think so, because The Wire often covers.
No, outside of The Wire, I mean.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that sort of.
I mean, I always being a sort of being a kind, not so much a goth, but goth adjacent certainly, and being kind of goth growing up and having lots of goth mates. I always saw like Nurse with Wound, Current 93, Death in June, and even like Strawberry Switchblade, that's what Rose McDowell stuff, and Daniel Dax. I always saw that as kind of goth adjacent. I saw like the real goth stuff, obviously like Nephilim and Sisters, but and then the stuff around them like oh god, what were the sort of like the Balaam and the Angel and more like the sort of poppy stuff. I always kind of saw goth, like the people I knew that were like really hardcore into it were the guys that would be playing me like sort of Death in June and Current 93 band. This is back in like 1988, 89. So I always saw it as it's like goth was the gateway into getting into that kind of stuff. You know, like with any kind of music, you get into stuff, but this goes back to this kind of youth culture thing. It becomes quite a sort of what's the word I want? Not a token of pride or emblem, but if you're really into it, then you sort of get into the deeper stuff and the more underground stuff. So that was I kind of saw it as a goth adjacent sort of thing, while not hearing it in the music so much.
I think the big difference is that all the main goth bands are goth rock bands, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true. It's not
this
rock.
Music is just not rock at all. It's something much more sophisticated, I think.
At that period of time that you're talking about, Stunty, I was out then.
But honestly, Steve,
I was doing
think
other things, and so this thing totally passed me by, and I get the feeling that the general public had no idea about any of these bands.
Well, no, they didn't. But I think a lot of this is to do with your age, and this is the thing: is the age.
I'm going.
Oh, my posh mic, dude. A lot of this to do with the age, because whereas you're getting into like sort of Henry Cow and Hatfield in the North, and sort of Robert Wyatt, which I got into, but I had to. That stuff was already like 10, 15 years old by the time I got turned on to it. This stuff was current. And if you're like sort of 16, 17, in like 88, 89, then if you're into it kind of weirdo music, you're kind of more tapped into what is happening at the time.
But was that getting as much airplay?
No.
So it wasn't.
But then neither was Henry Cow, right? Well, I mean, where was Henry Cow getting played? No one had heard of it. I mean, it took me 2 years. I read about Henry Cow in about 1989, and it wasn't until 90 or 91 that I actually finally heard them. And I'd been looking for their stuff. You just couldn't find their records in Plymouth in the second-hand shop.
It was on the radio in the 70s.
But like what I was saying before, I think with this, the Coil diaspora or whatever you want to call it, a lot of the attraction for people was the sort of lifestyle and the culture around it. Yeah. Whereas with Henry Cow, it's much more very purist interest in the music, isn't it?
No, I don't know. No, because there was a sort of lifestyle with Henry Cow and Gong and a lot of those Virgin bands.
Gong, definitely, yeah.
Well, yeah, they've gone, but a lot of those Virgin bands. I mean, particularly Henry Cow, and we said we wouldn't talk about politics, but their thing was this like radical Marxist politics. Was Henry Cow, and the whole band was run like this sort of Marxist collective. And actually, if you read the diaries of what was going on in Henry Cow, it doesn't sound like it was a lot of fun being in that band. So there was a lifestyle that went with that as well, and with those bands around that. And it was a kind of rejection of, that's why when you say about, I don't think of like Hatfield and Henry Cow and that was being prog. I mean, they didn't think of it. They felt themselves very different from like Yes and Genesis and ELP and even Gentle Giant probably. They saw themselves as being like part of this underground culture and being really radical. So I think I think the two things do map on. I think what it was different. I mean, it was definitely just the idea of getting into stuff that was really obscure and weird and kind of not known by many people. It was kind of, I don't want to say it was a cool thing, but it was something you wanted to get into because you kind of, the fact that you didn't hear it on the radio and you didn't really hear it anywhere made this more exciting. I mean, same with, for me, Cardiacs. Cardiacs was really, you only heard about Cardiacs through fanzine culture. Because even Peel wouldn't play Cardiacs. Peel hated them, or at least his producer did. So it was this culture like fanzines, which I think I think the things that you got into and the things that we were getting into, I think they do map on in a similar sort of way.
I recently
agree. I don't know.
I get what you mean, and I tend to agree. I recently read an interview in a fanzine from the 80s, a British fanzine of Robert Wyatt. I happened to got the fanzine because there was also a Nurse with Wound interview in the same fanzine, which kind of is interesting. And Robert Wyatt was like kind of reflecting in this on his career and a lot on the Matching Mall time, which is my favorite. The first Matching Mall album is for me one of the best albums ever made. And you kind of feel that in a way he had no idea what he was doing, because he was creating something new. There was not really any framework for what he was doing. And in that same fanzine, there was also an Alan Moore interview, who I'm soon to interview here, actually.
Alan Moore?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I forgot to tell
you.
I forgot to tell you that you have a common interest in graphic novels.
Oh.
Okay, well, he's about to release his first new book, and we're gonna do an interview, hopefully, about music, which he has never really discussed, because which is strange.
Well, good score. I mean, I've been
He's just outside, actually. He's coming in now.
Yeah, no, I've been. I got turned on to Alan Moore when I was about 13 or 14 through 2000 AD, and I've been riding sidecar with him ever since. He's the one guy I kept up with everything he did, right through to Jerusalem and all his comic stuff. So I'm a huge fan. Yeah.
The most righteous living being in the world, I would say.
Yeah, I know. I'll go along with that. Yeah, but him and Hodorowski, I think. But
I would totally disagree on that. But I've met Jorodowski, so I haven't met Alan Moore. But no, Jorodowski is a complete bluffer. He's a hustler.
What do you think?
He is 100%.
Okay. All right.
What's the opposite of substance?
Vacuous.
Jorodowski, that's the word. Sorry.
Really? Only because I saw an interview with him recently. Oh, I said recently, about 4 years ago. I saw an interview with him, and I found it so inspiring. Him talking about art and his relationship with art, and it really there were so many things that I sort of took from that.
He's very good at being inspiring. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Like it's, but the thing is, what I wanted to go with the what Robert Wyatt was saying, like that the feeling you got that he had no idea really where he was going. When you guys are doing the Utopia Strong, it's a completely different time. I have this theory that since I guess that since Britpop, since around '93, if you take an album like Loveless by My Bloody Valentine, when that was released, we had no idea where the glass ceiling was.
Yeah.
Nowadays, when you start music, you kind of already know how big or how small your world is going to be. And that might have an influence on the music.
I think in terms of rock music, I think the territory has now been mapped out. I think when I was like a teenager and even into the 90s, it still felt like stuff was happening in almost mainstream rock that had never been done before. I remember in the early 90s, Shudder to Think put out like Pony Express record. And I just thought this was like the Trout Mask replica of like sort of hard guitar rock. I just never heard music like that. But I think the territory is now being mapped out. I don't hear anything in guitar music that has done something that blows my mind as much as, say, when Voivod put Nothing Face out. I'd never heard music like that before. I never hear anything with guitar music that I haven't heard before. I think now we're no longer in a process of invention. We're in a process of refinement. So you've got bands, even bands like, say, take a band like Electric Wizard, or even whatever. They're taking sort of tropes that we know and refining it into something. But there's no one making the album in guitar music that's blowing your mind anymore.
Yeah, and like with albums like that, that is, well, it is. Most people would say it is an industrial music album. In my mind, it's a whimsical folk pastoral record in many ways. And I find this in a second-hand record store in Stockholm here. Like, this record was around. I mean, it was, like Steve was saying, it was probably not playing on the radio that much, but it did have some. It was distributed. if you wanted it to back then when it was released, if you knew about it and you asked your record shop to get it, they would be able to do that.
It was very much in the
Nowadays,
NME, wasn't it?
sorry.
It was very much in the NME and Melody
Yeah.
Maker sounds and
Yeah.
all that thing back then.
The media world was much smaller in many ways. Like it was easier to access it if you wanted. Nowadays, it just seems that when you do, like, so you have released 2 albums, proper albums on Rocket Records, and I guess if you go to record stores that are independent, you can find them probably in the big city, in HMV or something like that. You would be able to get them, not necessarily find them, but that also means that you guys have to do stuff like that.
Oh, I love seeing them. I really love seeing those. Thank you.
This is how I discovered you guys. Steve knows the story, and basically, sorry for Kavus' ego, but as a big Coil guy, I just saw on Discogs, oh, there's this band with someone who was in Coil, like, oh, interesting, oh, Bandcamp, oh, they're sold out, oh, bummer. And then you guys announced that you had a few semi-faulty copies of the early ones, and that's how Steve and I connected. For those who don't know, you guys have been doing these since 2020, like you started during the pandemic, maybe?
Yes, I think the
Yeah,
first
It
one
was.
yeah.
Yeah.
We got some early lateral flow tests from Germany, so we were able to meet up before most people could.
I mean, what I love about seeing that is as much as I love the music, I don't remember so much about the ones that came from gigs.
Well, I can tell you that even if it's dry, it still sticks a little bit on plastic.
I know.
I know. Well, in
So-
fact, so the way
So
we did
just I'm going to describe for the people who don't know this yet. These are silkscreen jackets.
actually,
and
they're
you-
lino cuts.
Yeah, exactly.
line
Sorry,
cuts, yeah.
which is even better. So,
Yeah.
and you did 250 copies of each of them,
Uh-huh.
and then stamped the label.
My job
And-
was stamping. I stamped the labels.
Yeah, me and Mike. So I made the lino cuts, and then me and Mike printed them. I rolled on the ink. Mike pressed them down, and then we had Steve's snooker table to do them on. And initially it would take us 2 days, but the problem was getting them dried. And Steve was living in a place that at least then was big enough to lay them all out.
Yeah, they're still not dry.
Still not dry. But the last one we did, which is actually musically one of my favorite, Jaya. Steve had moved out, so me and Mike did it because me and Mike lived together here, and
That one is dry.
that one is dry. 'cause
Yeah, that one is. Yeah,
we use
because this one is it's a different. This one is
we used
gouache, right?
water-based-
Yeah.
We used water-based thing, but it doesn't look as nice. So
Yeah, the other ones is acrylic, right, or something.
no, it's oil-based.
Oil. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well.
They took 2 months. I had them drying out in my house. 250 spread out all over the place for the first one, and they still didn't dry after 2 months. We just they're a bit drier, but then I then refined the way of drying. I had some old snooker cues, the things you play with, right, sticks, and I thought, oh, there's holes in the middle of the cardboard, so I threaded them all through. So I had about 50 on each snooker cue, resting between 2 boxes, and they were all just hanging there. That was a much more sophisticated way of drying them out, but they still didn't dry. And therein lies the beauty of homemade products. But my favorite one, I think, is Dream Sweeper, which is the second one.
Yeah.
The reason being that it was probably only our third or fourth gig.
Yeah.
And it was the first one we'd ever done in London. And I was so nervous. And we went on stage supporting Teeth of the Sea, another band on Rocket Recordings. And I at this stage, I was barely able to play a modular synth, really. I was getting away with it, I felt more back then. But I was able to just about do my job. And I can't tell you how nervous. I was more nervous than when I played in snooker events. It was horrible. Went on stage, and then somehow we created a piece of music live that we went, we could put this out as a piece of music. And that for me is like that one for me is sort of the one for what it means to me to have sort of jumped the level from whatever to actually being able to do it. And that was a wonderful moment for me. And I still listen to it, and it still brings back goosebumps. And I think it's actually a really good bit of music, although it wasn't planned. They're all improvised.
It's just a desk recording as well. But what I love about this whole series that we've done, I suppose it was just the kind of thing I'd always loved the idea of doing. I love this idea of this sort of DIY band, sort of like Crass style or Henry Cow or whatever. And I don't even think we'd necessarily had this idea, because I hadn't done lino cut since I was at school. The last lino cut I did was probably 1988. And then just some idea came together, and it was just this idea of these manila sleeves with lino cuts, and we'll do a limited edition, we'll hand number it. And it's just really, really appeals to me, not necessarily to try and do something that excludes people, because the thing is, if you want to hear that stuff, you can just go and stream it from our Bandcamp page, as many times as you like for free, or download it. It's totally fine. It's not, but just to make this lovely individual thing where everyone was different down to the because who was it Christian Markley that did Footsteps, and he laid all out the mat, and then people walked on them, and I just love these sort of these albums, so it was really exciting to do that kind of thing.
There's the topic of the actual object that is interesting, but just to be clear, this what kind of music this series is. So you have these true studio albums, and then these records are live recordings or live sessions that you kind of sometimes re-edit a little bit or rework a little bit. What's interesting is in the 90s and 2000s, you had these bands like Nurse with Wound, Coil, who were regularly selling CDRs of live shows, etc. You took the extra step of loving objects, because if you are into Coil and Nurse with Wound, bands like that, it's very cool bands to be fans of and collect, because there's design objects that also are very limited, but not in a capacity that if you're really into it and if you really follow it, you will be able to get it. So it's something quite special, because it creates a proximity with the band. I don't mean in a stalker fan kind of way, but just it allows you to connect to the band and to the world of the band, and which opens doors to elsewhere, hopefully, for people. But I remember getting these records from at gigs from Coil and Nurse with Wound, and sometimes getting them in the mail. But with you also, getting
Steve's writing there. Yeah, I love it.
No, but that you would also stamp these things here. Don't worry. It just happens. I have a whole I don't throw these away, not because it's just fun. It was
you were the person that I would imagine we were making these for, and I couldn't believe that these sort of people. I can't believe that they exist. I just couldn't believe that our music would then find these people, because we did want to make these beautiful things. And actually, when we printed them all up and we're leaving them out to dry, just seeing this wall of all the different covers, but the same, it looked beautiful. And then when Steve was putting the stamps on and we were putting them in, it's a really exciting process. And also it's the fact that we did all of, we did it ourselves, down to Steve would do all the mailing and in the stamping and the labels. We would do the printing. So it would be a nice session that we'd have. It would be 2 days together. We'd start, it was like a full on day job. It's like, we'd start at 9 a.m. and knock off at like 8 p.m. and just be all day doing this sort of repetitive task. But it's there's a love to it, and and while we're doing it, we're listening to our music and stuff anyway.
Here's an interesting thing, in as much as we record quite a lot, not all, but quite a lot of the gigs we do, and also we record rehearsal sessions and that. And I take more than Mike and Kavus, who've got doing far many more things with their own art, Witching Tale and Kavus doing his solo stuff, and also being in other bands as well. I've got plenty of time on my hands to listen to all this stuff we've accumulated, and there's some marvelous stuff out there. But the question to you would be, how often could you release one of these? Because I think we've got a backlog of maybe another 4 albums like this. That is a quality stuff, in my opinion.
And you're about to embark on a small tour, which means
and we record more. So we've got a 5th one in the pipeline.
The 5th one's done.
But how often can you go to the well on this?
Well, the problem you have now, guys, is you can't do anymore because Steve has moved and you don't have access to the pool table.
Yeah, but so what we're doing, the next one, which actually we recorded a few months ago, but we just hadn't had time to all be together to organize it. The next one is actually a studio recording, but it's on the same theme. It's like 2 long pieces, and it's kind of, I think of the next one as being our sort of Rainbow Dome music. It's probably our most full-on kind of ambient one, but it's really, really richly layered. And so we're gonna take a slightly different approach in that it's still going to be hand done, but it will be a print rather than a lino cut. And I've already done the cover, so we're going to get it hand printed this time.
But you're going to manage to keep it a little bit grungy, because that's part of the charm.
You'll like it.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll like it. Yeah. It hasn't been.
But it's just
it's not sophisticated.
No, it will still be a very handmade process. We'll still put the labels on ourselves and the stamps, but it won't be a lino cut. It'll be a print. But don't worry, it's and so far the next one is my favorite. Well, not that there should be a favorite. It's my favorite. But what I really love about these is you get a sort of insight into how our tunes start before we refine them for the studio albums, because like that often, like, it might be a gig or it might be just us playing a 20-minute piece, but like what we'll do for the studio album, we'll record 20 minutes of improvising, and there'll be 3 minutes we go, oh, that's really good, we'll work on that, and then we sort of edit that down, and then we put on overdubs and other instruments, what have you, over that 3 minutes. Whereas the studio recordings is like, okay, it's a little peek into our process, and maybe some people prefer that. I mean, I love it all. I'm just really glad we can generate something that seems interesting.
For those who are discovering this project now, there's the link to the Bandcamp in the description of the video, and of course these are limited and sold out. But I would encourage you to go and subscribe to the Bandcamp so that you will be told when a new one comes out. And you can also go and listen to the previous ones and download them. I would describe the music, of course, it would be like, one could describe that as electronic music, etc. But I would just say it's straight up psychedelic music. It's before anything else.
Well, yeah. That's how we think of it. It's just psychedelic music.
I think
just psychedelic music.
Yeah, I think we were quite pleased. We decided quite quickly that after the first one to make sure that it was 1 copy only. And I think the other thing was I was keeping an eye on Discogs as well. I think we only had 2 or 3 flippers.
But what's that got to do with psychedelic music? That's not what he's talking about.
Well, I was going back to the point of how many people had.
Yeah, but he's talking about the music. He's saying he thinks of it as psychedelic music.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching live a band splitting right now.
How much is your microphone? How much is that microphone? I mean, I'll buy you another one. Anyway, but it was it's been a good process. I think I prefer the long form pieces. One thing for me that was an amazing insight that I didn't know what it was like was to take pieces of music, find a piece, and then work on it, and then watching these two people going about their business, and I was included in it as well, making decisions on what was going to be added and what was going to be, when was going to be dropped, and that sort of we didn't have many stems, we didn't have much sophistication early on, and we still don't want to have too much of that. But it was just amazing watching how these tracks for the studio albums were formulated. But the long form pieces for me are where it's at, because I just love the journey, and I want more of those out personally, with loads of even the mistakes in it, just the things where they resolve, and then the next minute you've got a piece of beauty comes out. So that for me is where it's at, and that's, you know, and a lot of the stuff I listen to on your show as well, the long form pieces are the ones I gravitate towards.
Maybe we should like press some records at 16 RPM just so it could be even longer.
Great idea.
I'm really looking forward to the next one coming out. Well, getting the next one done, because we did finish we finished the music a while ago. And then we were umming and ahhing a bit about the mix, and then we all just went off and did different things. And we just need to get it together and get that one done, because I really, really like it.
And when might that happen? By the end of the year or early next year?
Early next year. I mean, the beauty of what I really, do you know what? Sorry, just to get excited. What I really, really like about these records is not having to write fucking press releases, not having to do interviews, not having to do any of that. Oh, Steve Davis thought he might be, and all that kind of. I like that we just go, yeah, there's a new record, boom, it's out, and then we just stand back and post them out. And we don't have to do band photos or press releases or like interview. It just is like, there it is, it's out, good, and people dig it. And I really, really like that. Not that I know you've got to play the game with all that and then send the record out. And I love that you don't have to get it judged by people. You know, oh, what's our review like? Do they like it? Don't they like it? Oh, it's good. It's just, there it is. There's our record. Get on with it. And now we go back to it. It's great.
Stevie, you were about to say?
No, I was thinking about the fact that we're not on this show doing this as any type of promotion. You know, it's like, as anybody that regularly watches your show, you know, like I'm a sort of I lurk, or I'm in the chat room, or I'm watching on catch up if I can. I watch every show. I'm an absolute addict to your choices of music. Here's a little moment here. Your choices of music thank you very much. have opened doors that I didn't know existed, which is wonderful. And I think it's wonderful that you do your show. And I bullied these two to make sure that we did this tonight, just in case.
You didn't bully us hard.
No, he didn't. No, because of the fact of it means a lot to me as well. But also, I know full well, you know, this type of music is the stuff you like as well. So yeah, we're all amongst friends, really, more than anything else.
In this case, you know, I used to. I've made music. I've had labels, etc. But I also was a journalist, so I'm in this weird position where I've actually been somewhat successful at both, which is not that often you get that. So I tend to think I kind of have an understanding of musicians. That is maybe a bit different than from journalists, but I also have a journalist mind, analytical and historical and all that. But like you're on my channel, I've done interviews with 3 artists before only. One was Jean Schwartz, one of the biggest names in musique concrète ever. But when I say biggest, I'm the first person to say that, because it's history that shows that, but no one has realized that yet, in a way. So for me, it's more about like what I love about the music you guys done, beyond the fact that I had an interest in what you've done before, is how it keeps opening doors. And that's what music that I'm interested in is. Music that, of course, there is something that pleases you, but that you sense that there's also some, there's a corner somewhere, and behind the corner there's a path somewhere, or paths. And when Steve was saying that he's into the long form releases you've done, you've also done a 7-inch that I can't find here, but like it's here. I tend to find to see the albums now almost like library soundtracks because of the format compared to all the that's the one.
Oh, you mean that one? I'm the only one in the band that likes this.
Yeah. Oh well.
I like it, but yeah.
Well, you like it so much it was left off the album.
What album?
The second album.
It was never going to be on the second album.
It was left off it.
When
we didn't put it
when
on.
We didn't put it on.
It was never considered to be on it.
Yeah, because that's because we didn't like it. It's all right, isn't it? It's okay.
This is true.
Is it?
Yeah,
I like it.
True. A better track. Is
it's just Kavus. They haven't told you yet. You guys are successful now. You are getting asked to contribute to other projects, and you're giving your leftovers to.
But I like it.
It's all right.
I think it's good.
But can you guys like? So it is psychedelic music stemming out of true electronic music, in the sense that it's not. I often try to remind people that we have this kind of lazy definition of electronic music where we put everything together, that is like techno, house, electro, ambient, etc. Whereas electronic music originally, like stuff like this, the idea of electronic music is originally to allow the composer to escape tonality, to not be limited by dodecaphonism, and to find microtonality, or the intervals between two tones, as in Indian classical music, but with oscillator, which means that, sure, you can tune your sound to one key of the scale, the dodecaphonic scale, but you also have as many tones you will find by turning the knob between the two official tones. So that was the revolution of electronic music. Most of the instruments that you guys use, like the modular synthesizers, are the new versions of the gear from the 50s, 60s, 70s that actually allows you to do that. So could you maybe talk a little bit about what it is you are achieving and how you do it, the three of you together?
Well, I think it's actually very tonal. I think all the music that we do, and it is usually within an 8-note scale, or fewer notes. So we're not really. I don't feel that much we exploit that the microtonal possibilities.
It is very melodic or harmonic, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe the first album there was a little bit of wonkiness on it, maybe. Yeah, but I'm not sure. It would be a nice thing to explore more, because I think we could probably do it. But the thing is that, I mean, a lot of the time we're preparing for gigs, and I'm not too sure they'll handle that as well. But maybe that could be something for long form pieces that we might explore.
I think what I like about synthesizers is that you can get you can stack up perfectly tuned intervals, and that sounds so pleasing to my ear. And it's much harder to do that with bagpipes or flutes or whatever, because of just the natural wavering of breath. But you can just get it's very like the Lamont Young stuff, where you're just listening to the quality that a particular interval has. And I think that's why on a sort of music theory level, it's quite simple. The on a harmonic level, you'd say it's quite simple. Would you say what we do? Or
I think there's also enough scope within the world of synthesizers these days to just add enough waviness to take it off a completely accurate note. I think there's detuning them diffraction. There's a lot of the modules you can detune them just enough. It's just enough to make it a bit more interesting than bang on.
It just struck to me. I had never thought about that. As Michael, you were going back to the Lamont Young drones. Like these are modular synthesizers because you use a lot of models, but what you can do with it is modulation as well, which is totally disconnected to different concept in this case, but like that happens to be but I still think that like I hear you, and I wouldn't say what I was describing as the revolution of electronic music doesn't mean that the result is inevitably going to be atonal. It's just that because the way you reach these tones, you allow yourself to go through all the microtonality, which you actually experience while you listen to this. Maybe when you're making the music, you're actually aiming for certain tones, certain keys, but the result is much vaster than that.
I see. Yeah. I get what you're saying. I agree.
But so you guys, so unfortunately now, like people have, well, we have this recording to enjoy either by buying the records or listening to it on Bandcamp or whatever. But you guys play live. Like the birth of the project was to play live, right? It was not necessarily to.
Well, no, it wasn't. It was more. There we are. It was more that we made this record and we thought it'd be nice to put it out. And then when we got signed, Chris from Rocket sort of said, "Well, you're going to play live," and I think this was
me
and Mike said, "Well, yeah, sure." And then me, Steve was rather
worst day of my life.
Steve was rather,
So,
not.
So there we are. All of a sudden, Rocket Recordings decide that they are going to put out the first album, and they actually like it, and they liked it in spite of the fact of the novelty value. That is actually, they thought this is all right, this is not what we thought it was going to be, and this is okay. So we went and we met in Cafe Otto with Chris Reeder, and we shook hands. And after we shook hands on the record deal, Chris then said, "And of course you will be touring to promote the album, won't you?" And Kavus and Mike went, "Of course." And all of a sudden, the penny dropped what that meant. And the next minute was I had to deal with the fact of going on a stage to play music. And it was a horrific moment. And it was even more horrific the first couple of times we did it. And I still...
Was it the technicality or the imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome, and also just the nerves. And you would think that, I've been on a stage before, of a different type of stage. But I sort of knew a bit more what I was doing, so there is a little bit of the imposter syndrome, but it wasn't that. It was the fact that we were just going on stage and playing music to people that were facing you, and this is something you've had this.
Well, no, I haven't though. The thing is, I'd never done anything like this at all publicly before. I mean, there was an element in Guapo that involved like some improvisation, but it would be like more in a sort of a jazz, not jazz, but in a way that we're going to go off. We're going to, we'll improvise, and then at some point there'll be a cue, and then we're back into the thing. But I'd come from very much completely a world of sort of rehearsal intensive music. So whether it was Monsoon Bassoon or Cardiacs or Knife World or Guapo, it's very, very rehearsal intensive music. And what we were doing with the Utopia Strong, I'd never done that before. I mean, it was as new to be able to go on stage and to improvise completely. I mean, we developed a bit of a structure as a safety net, but it was as new to me what you were doing as it was to you when I played shows as well. So it's not really that I had experience. I had experience of going on stage, but going on stage where you're fully prepared and you're rehearsed, then the only thing that can fuck up is just if you can't hear each other properly. But as long, or someone in, someone in the band isn't playing well, but as long as you're on it. But it was, for me, it was just as much a kind of
but then when we've been playing as a Utopia Strong on stage, have you ever had the feeling when you've been playing as the Utopia Strong that you wanted to run out of the room?
Yeah, a couple of times. That Charles Hayward, Charles Hayward,
because I have.
Yeah, no, that gig we did for Charles Hayward, I fucking hated it. I wanted to, after about 3 minutes, I just wanted to go.
Charles Hayward from This Heat.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
We did a show for him. He puts on shows in a place called the Albany in South London, and it was just after lockdown, and I was in a bad mood anyway. But I thought we were fucking shit. I hated it. I just wanted to
sit
get
on the fence.
No, I hated it. So no, I have had experiences like that. Yeah,
fair enough. Okay, but
I've done gigs with Knife World where I just
really.
The worst gig of my life was with Knife World.
Wow.
Where I just I wanted to. It was like an anxiety dream gig, where everything was going wrong. So.
But then you listen back and you go, hey, it wasn't as bad as you thought.
Mm.
Yeah, if I had been in the audience, it would probably have been very pleasant.
Maybe.
I don't know, but not that one at the Albany.
Yeah.
But so for people who have no idea how it would be, and who haven't, because most of us have only had a chance to hear you, not see you. Now that you probably feel much better about all of that, playing live, hopefully. Well, at least you got good results, like recorded. So it's basically the three of you with modular synthesizers, but not just that. Like basically nowadays it can be just about anything you want to bring that you can bring on, right?
Well, the way it started was that Mike and Steve played modular, and then Mike was also augmenting it with pipes as well. And then I was playing initially harmonium through effects pedals and guitar through effects pedals, but I was doing everything I could to make the guitar not sound like a guitar. So it'd be playing with EBO and playing through, kind of strange pedals and stuff. But now I've sold out and I've got a synth as well. So we've done one show since I've been also had a synth in the equation. But we're about to do a little tour.
And you didn't sing initially, did you?
I started singing. Yeah,
after about a year or something. You
started adding vocals into it, and again improvised, just more like building up loops. But I started doing it, and it worked well. And I think it felt like it changed the dynamic of the band a bit, which was nice. But actually, I'll tell you what. One thing that happened, we were doing, which I think really changed the band, is that we were doing that tour. We were doing a tour with Teeth of the Sea in 2022, and
with whom?
A band called Teeth of the Sea, who are also on rock. 2020, was it 2020?
Yeah.
No, it was after COVID, wasn't it? It was 2022. It was post lockdown because we did that one-off gig with them, but then we did the tour.
21.
Well, I thought lockdown was 22. It finished.
No. Anyway,
whenever it was.
Yeah.
But after about I think we had about 8 or 9 dates booked, and we were open. It was like a joint headliner, but we were doing the same length, but we were going on first because Teeth of the Sea are pretty banging. And after about the second or third show, Mike.
You only did 2 gigs.
Yeah, Mike did 2 gigs and tested positive, and so it was like he had to go off the tour. So it was like, well, what do? We can't pull the tour. So the initial idea was that me and Steve were going to carry on as a 2-piece, but each night we were going to get a different guest from each city. So we thought, oh, well, who can we get? Every city we go to, we'll get in touch with some other local musician and get them to improvise with us. But then what happened is I just think for whatever reason, we didn't do that for the first one. And we did 1 gig just as a duo, me and Steve, and then another one. And what actually happened, I think, was that because there was no mic, Steve had to sort of step up what he was doing to at least cover some of the elements of what Mike was bringing. So some of the more melodic elements, I think, because normally Steve would be like mainly bass and drums.
Yeah, that was quite kind of my next question. If you guys have kind of semi-assigned roles in the with the
Well,
synthesizer.
sort of, yeah, sort of. But what happened? Because up until then, we'd done one tour when the album came out, and Steve was so nervous. If you don't mind me saying, Steve would be so panicky before the shows, and it can be quite infectious. It makes you feel like really, as well. Because Steve would just be like, "Oh, why am I fucking doing this? Why didn't this? This was a mistake. This was a mistake. Oh God, and be really surprised if we'd done a good show. But because of this tour we're doing with Teeth of Sea, and I think it helped having them on the tour as well, because it made it look, we were on first. But I felt like over the course of those 8 dates, your confidence each night really, really increased, because you were just put in a position where you had to sort of step the game up a bit. And that's when I started really developing the singing side of it, because I just thought, well, how can we make this entertaining as a two-piece? Because Mike had almost been like not the Eddie Van Halen of the band, but he'd been like the lead instrument with the pipes, and it was a really big part of.
Because to some degree, your singing does sound like bagpipes.
Yeah, so to some degree, yeah. That had been like quite a visual part of the show. Would be Mike standing at the front with the pipes. So then it's like, well, I better stand at the front and go, And I felt like the band got better once Mike got back. We'd become a better band, because I think we'd had to develop something just to make it entertaining for that tour as a two-piece.
Yeah, and
I think even though there wasn't any defined roles really, we've sort of fallen into the roles that we probably are best suited to. So it's fallen upon me to do some type of drums if needed, and some type of melodic sequence, and that is a sort of maybe a little bit of the bedrock of then
the groove
comes. So we likened it. I likened it once to a little bit. If it was a football team, that I was like the centre back, and this was like Ronaldo, and this was Lionel Messi, who had free reign to do whatever they liked as long as you had a good centre back.
So you're saying that you're Xavi?
Yeah, I'm just there. I'm just trying to be as solid as possible. And I quite like that as well, because you don't need 3 Ronaldos in the same band.
Because with a modular synthesizer, the way I saw you guys, you have sort of Euro racks and stuff like that, right? Basically, you can be like a modular synthesizer basically means you are custom making an instrument. You could make a modular synthesizer that would only do drums.
Yeah, anything. Yeah, you do whatever you like. Yeah.
So basically, when you do your own rack, you give it like a direction. It's not just and in that sense, do you guys have a specific direction? Does one of you is more in charge? Like you can already told us there, but like, would we find that in the instruments that you guys have actually?
Well, the big problem is that when we've been rehearsing and we've done sort of just jams and we've listened back, you go, oh, was that me? And sometimes you don't even know. And
recordings
that's
of
wonderful
gigs
as well.
Yeah, it's really nice that recordings of gigs we're at that point where, excuse me, we're and this happens a lot. Going, who's doing that? Is that me or you? we don't know who's doing what. At this point, excuse me.
Yeah.
The sort of acoustic instruments are so disguised by the way we treat them and the way we loop them that you and treated that you really can't tell a lot of the time who's doing what or who's leading what, which is really lovely. It's almost like it makes it a lot more egoless. There's no real sort of, there's a lot of melodic stuff, but there's no real sort of soloing. Any kind of melodic thing is just serving to sort of move the thing on, rather than it being a platform for someone to sort of take a solo or something.
Best guitar solo I've ever heard. Yeah, there's a statement. This is not self-promotion at all. Best guitar solo I've ever heard is on Ninth Art.
Really?
Yeah. Because it's not like any other normal solo. I don't try and find it. I don't know where it is, but it's my favorite guitar solo.
You're talking about Kavus' first solo album, right?
No.
No.
On Ninth Art, somewhere on Ninth Art.
Yeah.
And it was recorded, I think part of it I don't know what it was called now, but yes, on that album, there's a point where it's exultory. It's just up there, and it's not like your normal guitar solo. Anyway, advert over.
I must say that uncharacteristically, one of my favorite guitar solo is on an album of a band I have zero interest in, that
Not
want to
Dire Straits.
ignore as much. Almost Genesis, like late 80s Genesis, but that's another story. But
What track? Tell me. I want to know it.
it's called the Brazilian.
Okay.
Brazilian Man on the 87 album. It's it's kind of like a sci-fi track with double drums and like an instrumental track.
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
Oh,
Do you want another one of them?
I'm okay.
But so for Steve, this is your first foray into making music. For Kavus and Michael, we've talked about more with Michael yet so far about what you've done before, but you also do stuff now. Like Michael has got this band with his partner, the Witching Tower, which my listeners have been subjected to, or which is probably music that is closer to all these instruments that you told us that you were trained to or with, right?
No, well, what you mean the folk instrumentation?
Yeah.
Well, I mean the second album there's hardly any. It's almost pure synthesizer.
Yeah,
that one.
yeah, that's true.
But I think it certainly as an element of your history, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, half of it.
Yeah, half of it has.
Yeah.
but it's a really it's really good. It's actually like it's I mean,
it's hard to describe the music, isn't it? I'm not sure exactly how to describe it. I was lucky enough to go to a great music venue in Birmingham recently, the Hare and Hounds, fantastic music venue, and watched Kavus playing a solo gig, and then the Witching Tale after, and it was a magical night of just unusual music that you don't hear much like that anymore. Not saying you ever did, but it's out there. The word psychedelic's overused, but it's out there in a different way, and it's just as relevant than anything that is truly compared to be trippy, like a whatever a Hawkwind album, whatever. It's as out there as I think, but also very understandable. I don't think I'm making any sense there. But
no, you do because, like, in a way, it's music that is probably quite difficult to market, but at the same time, when you listen to it, like there's no difficulty. It still brings a sort of challenge, but not in a antagonistic way, which is kind of unusual. I was talking. I'm working on a new label. And on that festival that I've just had in like a couple of months ago, we had a band called Himalaya Nightclub. They do a sort of like fourth world jazz, and they sent us the demo of the album, and it sounded like, if I'm being like harsh, like Muzak John Hassel, in the sense that it was very, very pleasant. All the tracks had this harmonic quality that was almost like you could feel that it could almost be like a sort of color on Spotify. I like this color. Okay, this fits this perfectly. And I was trying to have them like realize that it would be nice if there could be more contrast. And they told me, yeah, but at the same time, how often do you hear experimental music that is pleasant? And it's true. It's not that often. It's quite difficult in a sense that it might be more difficult to make experimental music that is pleasant and in a way almost mainstream. And that's kind of what I got from the Witching Tale. So yeah, I mean, I had to talk about that. You also have you just released last year, or not just, but last year you released a new album of the Stargazer Assistant, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
And
there's a
and
new one in the pipeline at the moment, actually.
and hopefully, like with the dynamic of Utopia Strong, the Utopia Strong, that allows you for more regular releases, which is also not what Kavus probably has in his other ventures. That, like, this was your latest album. It's not something that I guess you can just
It's just so shiny.
yeah, but it's probably not an album. You can't do like 3 of these each year, right?
No, it took me about
Yeah.
2 years to make that one.
Yeah. It's funny because Steve was like, I don't know if you like it. It's like, and I actually, I much prefer this one to the first one. I thought,
Okay.
I think it was that track, Heart the Same, very
Yeah,
long track. I played that so many times, also in the show, and people loved it.
Oh, thank you.
It has a sort of like, it was interesting because you can hear everything I know from you with an added quality that I think is logical, but that I had never heard in your music yet. The like 88, 93 indie,
Yeah.
but on a very long song, which is quite also new for that kind of, because it has singing. It's got this kind of like spirit, spectrum, ride, pale saints almost, even if it's got like kind of a more steady rhythm. But again, like, obviously psychedelic in nature, almost got like kind of um, uh, well, also I must say, like, to go back to like what we talked about earlier with Hawkwind, the other band that Michael Moorcock wrote lyrics for was Blue Oyster Cult, and there was some of like 80s Blue Oyster Cult in that for me
Okay.
when
I
they
don't
used
really know their apart from the obvious songs, like, Don't Fear the Reaper and like Godzilla. I don't really know their stuff. So
well, they have like this album in early 80s called Cultusaurus Erectus, where they use vocoder,
okay,
um, and which makes them basically sound like Daft Punk 30 years before, or like at least 15, but in a very psychedelic way. And the way you use the effects on your voice, etc., like that was something that you don't hear that much. That was kind of making me think of things from the past, but also in a very dynamic, now 2024 25 way. And it's just so lovely to see how you guys have all these different outlets to express things in very different fashions, and yet I can find you in each of these different projects. You now also helm Gong, that band that we mentioned before. I couldn't find my copy of Camembert Electric, but Gong, obviously, like, probably out of all the bands we mentioned tonight, one of the most famous ones, um, that achieved, I guess, like, again, no, like, probably not mainstream success, but it's such a an interesting position you find yourself in now, helming a band. Uh, like, it's almost like uh, a legacy band in a way now.
Well, they've moved, but before Kavus answers that, they've moved on from that, but they've obviously got that hanging over them. But there's only one track I think you do now.
we only do one old song now. Yeah, with
Yeah.
Master Builder, but the rest of it is all stuff from the last 10 years that we've written. But yeah, it's a really strange position to be in, and I don't know of any other band like it. And on paper,
Faust, maybe.
Well, no, but I mean, Faust have still got like Jean Hervé is still in Faust and Zappi.
Oh well, there's 3 different Faust.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Well, what I mean is, I don't know of any band where they've got the same name, but there's no original members, and they don't play any of the old tunes. They just do new stuff. It's a strange thing to be in, and that's what David Allen wanted us to do. And for a few years, the set, at least when we started, the set would be mainly older stuff and a bit of the stuff that we'd written with David Allen and a couple of new ones. But as the years went on, because we've been doing it for 10 years now, we were doing less and less of the older stuff, which is better for me because David's voice is higher than mine. So I struggle singing David's stuff. But now, as of like last year, I mean, we did a show in Poland and we played nothing old at all, a festival. And it was like, and it feels much better for us and we can bring a much better show because it's all the stuff that we've written. So it's a weird position to be in because the idea of a Black Sabbath with no original members doing their own stuff, it is horrifying. But for whatever
you're in a good position because, like, if you're a Gong fan and you don't accept change, then you don't understand anything about Gong in the first place.
Well, that's true because by 1976 there were no original members in the band. So, and then by the time Pierre Molin takes over Gong, he's just doing brand new stuff. So yeah, it's not the first time round for them. It's not this ain't their first rodeo. And the other weird thing about Gong is that none of us we're now a band that has been going for 10 or 11 years, and no one in the band owns Gong. So nobody has got the right to sort of try and inject their idea above everyone else. So, David and Gilly, the founders, are gone. So it is like 5 guys that do not own the band, but trying to make music that feels respectful of what the ethics of Gong, really. And trying to operate the band in the same way. It's still a kind of, in some ways, like an anarcho collective. It's still, we're self-managed and we run everything ourselves, and the guys in the band do all the business and work everything. It's completely self-run, like it always was. So it's a really strange position to be in, for sure.
You just don't live in a commune anymore, do you?
No, not well. With the commune being the bus, the van, because we're most of the time on the road now. So
well, I heard that the commune is Michael now.
Yeah, he is the commune. Yeah,
yeah.
No, but it's funny that you would. Like when you say, and well, how you described it, like for me, with my culture, the first thing I think is crass. So like,
yeah.
Penny Rimbaud, and which is not necessarily what you would associate with Gong, people from the outside. But maybe I don't know enough about Gong then. But
no, but I think the crass thing was a big anyway. At the same time as being a teenager. And getting into Gong and getting turned on by the whole crass community. And actually, even those crass records was like an inspiration with what we're doing with the Utopia Strong, with the self-made stuff, and like the fold-out covers and things. I mean, the crass was such a great model because that seemed like how you do it. That's how you do it ethically, So
yeah. I had had meant to.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, and which is actually, it's funny. It's such a good title for record, and I think it's obvious in your music. Like there's so many music that I actually enjoy that has a setting quite similar to yours, that where the music ends up being really cool, but also somewhat cold. And your music doesn't feel like that at all. You can, I mean, it probably sounds a bit naive to say, but I feel that you guys like each other when I listen to the music.
Yeah, well,
I truly do.
I think it's I think the music is very generous. It's generous music, as much as I do enjoy, like, someone like Anton Webern, it's not generous music, that kind of stuff. But
we won't be liking each other tomorrow because 8:30 tomorrow morning we've got to drive to Leeds to do the first of 4 gigs, and I would imagine by 1 o'clock we'll be at each other's throats in the van.
I'm gonna just sit in the back and look pretty. I won't worry my pretty little head about the driving.
What might happen is me and Mike will be in the front, and this one will go to sleep in the back.
That's right. Like you guys are also like breaking the modern paradigm of the electronic music artist. Like since considering the gear you have, like you do have to travel like in a van or something, right?
Yeah, we're working out to travel light, but the furthest we've been afield is Carcassonne for Andy Weatherall's festival.
Oh, that sounds like a gong story almost.
Yeah,
that's a long story as well. But
no, a gong like
story,
long story, yeah. But yeah, that was a long drive. But yeah, going to Leeds tomorrow morning to be bad enough.
Yeah, one of the few bands that like in my mind like has some similarities with you, or that are quite obvious, that also who are also releasing or used to release quite a lot like you, is this band.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you're how familiar you
No,
might
I
be.
don't know that. No,
They're a duo from the US doing sort of like probably Terry Riley inspired electronic music, but they do it it comes also from a sort of both punk background, punk in the sense that like it's empirical. We're learning by making, even if they're really good about it. And you also feel a sort of warmthness and connection between them that, for example, I don't feel necessarily in something that I find equally great, but for very different reasons. Surgeon and Anton Child, who's doing this duo called Transcendental something.
Oh, I love them. Yeah,
which is great, but it does have this kind of, maybe it's from Birmingham, the this industrial like almost steel aspect to the music making there. Sheffield has also some like what you try. Maybe it's probably a romantic, journalistic view of things, trying to assign values like that, emotional values, or
no, I understand what you mean, because I mean, it's for me, it's with what the Utopia Strong do. It's kind of it's really nice because we all want the same thing from the band, so it's not like there's ever really any friction when we're recording and when the decisions we're making. And usually if someone has an idea and someone else says, nah, that's not really working, then we go, okay, fine, we move on. It's never like, no, fuck you, we're going to do this idea and we're going to see, you know, we're all going the same way with it. And I think it is kind of friendly music, or it is at least it's kind of hippie-ish. I mean, there's something hippie-ish. It's not art. It doesn't feel like what we do is antagonistic, even though there are elements of dissonance in some of it. I think it's kind of, you know, it wants to be generous and giving, and I think that's what we're after. We don't want to make ugly music, although I quite like listening to some ugly music. We that's kind of not where any of us are really at with what we're doing. If that makes sense.
It makes perfectly sense, because I'm starting to try to come to terms with the fact that despite all this going in every direction possible, I can probably say that every record I have, I can break it down to psychedelic hippie music in a way or another. Like even Stockhausen, like the stuff from Stockhausen, or even stuff like this, Basil Kirschen, this is also psychedelic hippie music. Or the stuff from Ennio Morricone, I like. Even when he does like modern classical music, there is a sort of psychedelicness. It's, and I think it's a color, a value, a dynamic that people have kind of bastardized in music because of the fact that we use psych rock, that this has become a genre, and that psychedelic music is something like I was showing that like pipe or like the bagpipe record. This is psychedelic music as well, yeah. And there's so much music that if you just look at it from not necessarily the right angle, but there's so much music that there is an angle to look at it or to hear it that is psychedelic, that gives you a psychedelic experience, which is for me what works the most. Even if, like, I'm not going to start to talk about drugs. I don't take drugs, and maybe it's getting this from music that allows the chemical factory that our bodies already are to work well. Like the music is the fuel to the product itself in the end, and I guess that my first musical connection with you guys, Coil, from distance, was obviously psychedelic music. When you see a cock ejaculating pills,
Yeah.
when you look in details, which
Well,
was painted by. Sorry.
Well, LSD is the
Yeah,
title
Love
of
Secret.
the album.
Yeah, Love Secret Domain, which when I was 13 and I discovered that, I didn't get, of course, the LSD thing, but I did look closely at the cover and thought, like, what is this? and when you hear Rivers of London on this, like, which is almost like a folk song in nature.
I think at one stage in an interview, Kavus said something along the lines of the music that we've made makes you feel like you've taken drugs even if you haven't. I think that was
I mean, that's what you want. You're trying to go for it. You do want to trigger a higher state. You do want to sort of. I've said it before. I don't mind saying it. It feels like what we're trying to do is map out the architecture of infinity or another dimension, sort of thing. And that's, even if people think that's bollocks, at least we go in with that intent. We're going in that intent. I mean,
Well,
we're mapping out the architecture of eternity. So at least we're aiming high, rather than just singing about just singing about what goes on in every day. Oh, I'm just thinking about, like, the oppression, and we're not fucking singing about oppression. We are mapping out the architecture of eternity. We are aiming high with this.
Well, if people think this is bollocks, I'm the fool who fell for it.
Yeah, me too. I'm the fool that played it.
Another way, maybe rather than saying psychedelic music, you could say spiritual music.
Yeah.
Or cosmic music.
Yeah. Or cosmic music.
Yeah. Okay.
No, that's taken. That's taken. I'm sorry.
Oh, damn it. Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Well, guys,
it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Well, I'm happy to hear. Like, it would be nice if I heard Michael say that as well. No, it's fine. No, I hope that people will find this enlightening and will trigger some curiosity into taking an active step if you haven't already. It's such a fun dynamic you guys have. You have two people who had major achievements in bands that have cult status with them and beyond them, and you have a geezer who have achieved cult status beyond all of that, much beyond. And
household name.
Yeah. No, but like, it brings a fun dynamic that, in a way, you're the one with the least achievements, Steve, there, and at the same time, I mean, isn't it interesting when someone with huge achievement in another field finds a way to bring that experience, and that the empathy you build from that into a completely new field?
Well, it wasn't a plan. It just, it just happened. And
none of this.
These two gentlemen facilitated something that could never have been foreseen. And it's just, the sliding doors moments of it happening or not. You don't even want to think about what would have happened.
I just wanted to be in a band like Iron Maiden and have a big monster on stage and have ramps. I never saw this happen. Yeah, I still want ramps and a monster with Utopia Strong, but we'll.
I feel very lucky that it's happened, because it's been a journey that, for me, that's been quite emotional, and also quite the pinch me moment of being involved in making music that I didn't think was ever possible. And then also, I mean, maybe it's always the case, but it's also some of my favorite music, if not my favorite music. And that's, that happens, I know, but I find myself listening to it a lot, even with the amount of music I've got to listen to. Because I know you have a fantastic record collection, but I've got a pretty good one as well. Not as good as yours, but I've got, but the thing is,
you got a better Northern Soul record collection than I do.
but I'm just fortunate. I feel quite fortunate that something else has happened in my life that I'm getting a lot of pleasure out of. So that's been a wonderful thing. And these two lads have. Without these two, it couldn't have happened. Really.
It's a journey for me because I had never made music quite like this before. I'd certainly never made music using this process. And now, as a result of the Utopia Strong, and particularly for me, because I came from a music rehearsal intensive music with stuff like Cardiacs and what have you, where it's changing key constantly. It's always modulating, and it's a lot of extremely detailed, kind of like hyperactive music. And with the Utopia Strong, it was like we'll be in 20 minutes. For 20 minutes we won't change key. So it's like, well, how can that 20 minutes be really engaging while still staying in the same key? And so it's brought out a new understanding about what is possible about music for me. And as a result of what we've been doing in the last 4 or 5 years with Utopia Strong, that's had a real effect on my solo stuff and even Gong. I mean, there's stuff on the new Gong album that there's no way I would have written it had I never done the Utopia Strong. There's 2 tunes on the new Gong album which are very, very kind of post Utopia Strong for me, and same with the solo stuff. So just getting together with these two and making music has really, really affected the way I think about music and the way I make music now. So it's not just some side project. It's actually been kind of one of the main contributors at my age now to really not changed, but opened up a new understanding as to what could be done and and the kind of music I want to make. I couldn't have imagined I'd be making music like this, but it feels extremely natural and sort of really exciting, Thank you. Cheers, Mike.
No, but it's interesting to see that like it is. You were saying earlier, Kavus, that like you haven't heard anything with guitar that like feels like it's adding something to the lore or to.
I mean, kind of rock. I mean, in the rock, guitar, bass, drum,
and I would be even more harsher than you in a way, but you could say that for many types of music. And when I see the way I buy new music, when we see the amount of archival recordings of older bands, projects that have achieved cult status, like it's a horrible word, by the way, but whatever. If I look at my purchases during the year, how much stuff is genuinely new artists or people who might have done stuff before, but who are creating something new for themselves, finding a new challenge. I mean, yes, there are, but like with a sustainable quality, like you have 6 albums behind you now, and very little.
7.
You do,
isn't it? It's 7.
Yeah.
Well,
oh yeah, 7. Yeah, sorry, 7. Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, and it's been really fun to follow the journey so far.
Yeah, thank you.
And it feels that like you're only starting to scratch the surface, in the sense that you barely have done any rhythmical tracks so far. For example.
Yeah. Well, we've nearly finished. We've nearly finished the next studio album, and that's different from the other 2 again, I think. So it's I mean, it sounds like us, but I feel there's definitely stuff happening on the new one that we haven't done on the previous 2, so it's very exciting.
Yeah.
So who will be handling the drums?
Are there any drums on it?
There are actually. There are a few. Actually, it's more rhythmic. I'd say the new one's a little more rhythmic. I mean, it's
Really?
not.
Yeah.
I don't want to give away titles, Steve.
Well, whatever. It's interesting looking forward to how it's received, but I think we're happy with it going out the door.
Okay.
That's all you can be. Yeah. If you're happy with how it's gone out, then you can't judge how other people are going to judge it. But even the fact that it's going to get some type of exposure is amazing. So it's always a joy to do it. But if, as I say, back, if anybody had told me 10 years ago this was going to happen, I'd have just laughed at them.
And when is that supposed to happen, according to Rocket Recordings?
Well, we haven't mixed it yet, but what I love is we don't have a deadline. When it's done, it'll be done. But the last session we had, it's about a month ago that we were all together. The last session we had, we at the end of it, we realized, oh, this is a lot closer than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
We really, it's like, hang on a minute, we've mapped out it. We got a little bit more tweaking and a bit more mixing, but it's kind of, we got the shape of the record now, I think.
Maybe it's 6 months for the next studio album and 3 months for the next private release.
Yeah, that sounds
about
workable.
right.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
It seems also like, sure, it starts as the project of friends who have fun, who record an album for sure, but it seems that you're getting more serious about it as well.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean,
not necessarily in a business.
We're really into it. We're really, really into it, and we love doing it. And
no, but that you create the conditions to make it happen even more. Like you guys, the way you live and all that. Like, isn't it like easier now to do it than it was like 4 years ago? I mean, 4 years ago we had COVID, but
I think it's slightly harder actually. But that's just, it's not just geography. It's what happens in your life and other stuff that you're busy with, and I think we find it harder to get together at the moment than we did. Yeah,
but we all live near each other now, so.
Yeah, but we're also resisting the temptation to record it in a million stems that we then have to spend hours agonizing over every drum beat. So we're still sort of trying to make it more organic and so that things are baked in, so we can't change them, because that's how it started off. So even though it's nice to be able to mess around with levels, it's also the opposite is also sometimes feels more natural. So we're trying to avoid being too clinical, I think.
So you're telling us that, or telling me,
yeah,
that you're definitely not going to be the new Pink Floyd.
We're not even going to be the old Pink Floyd.
We should probably think about wrapping this up.
We've
got a drive.
I think we are.
I think we have.
I think we are. I just kept talking. Sorry.
Yeah. We brought this to a natural conclusion.
But we're definitely enjoying the challenge. Enjoying the challenge of trying to make every album different as well. So yeah. Stunt, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Really nice to meet you.
And I might be seeing you soon.
You can skip the might now.
Yeah, exactly. We're going on a record buying tour.
Where?
Cool. We're going to Den Bosch.
Okay.
We're Den Bosching it, hopefully.
Biggest record fair in the world, and then
I'll see you there. We'll have a big hug.
We'll have a big hug. We might also see all of us together in Sweden next summer. That might happen.
Whereabouts in Sweden are you?
Oh, it's not about where I am; it's where I'm taking you.
I'm just saying, because I'm in Europe with Gong in November and December, and I think.
Okay, yeah. I'll tell you. Like I'm around Stockholm, and so there's a good chance. Then we'll hook up there. Absolutely.
Oh, good.
I think we're playing Stockholm. I played I can't remember the name of it. Anyway,
You'll tell me later. Michael has some stuff to do now.
This half an hour chat was a great one. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this.
Fashing?
Sorry?
Sorry, is there a club called Fashing in Stockholm?
Fashing, there is a club called Fashing in
I've been there
Stockholm.
recently. Yeah, okay, sorry.
So I'll see you there.
Yeah.
And you guys go and check out the Bandcamp of the Utopia Strong. It's in the description there. Go check the Witching Tale, Kavus solo. I don't need to. People who like Gong, they're already following Gong. And just go on Discogs and look up what all these gentlemen are doing under various aliases, because they probably do crime in real life and have to hide their tracks with all these weird names around. But it's you'll find gold there. Certainly, at least something you will enjoy, because they cover a lot of ground. And yeah. If you just leave a comment, I'm sure if you have questions, maybe Kavus will answer them, or someone will answer them, and have a good tour, and don't die.
Try not to.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye bye.